Hey everyone, this is a piece from 2007 by Yves Coleman. It's titled, Does Stalinism Still Exist? So here we go. It may seem bizarre, sectarian, or quote, old-fashioned to continue to call the leaders and activists of the French Communist Party, quote, Stalinist or quote, neo-Stalinist today, when they are organizing joint debates and meetings with their former Trotskyist adversaries and the Soviet bloc has now disappeared. In response to a reader's letter, here are a few quick clarifications. First, two brief definitions. Stalinist, a person or group who identifies, quote, socialism with the societies set up in the USSR, Eastern Europe, China, Cuba, Vietnam, Cambodia, North Korea, and who regrets their demise and their allegedly, quote, positive role of both national and international at both national and international level. Neo-Stalinist, an individual or group who claims to have distanced themselves from the previous model, but is careful not to make a full assessment of their own party's responsibilities in perpetuating this ideological and practical model, and of the criminal responsibilities of the communist parties in power in the advent of totalitarian societies and, quote, state capitalist, unquote, regimes. In the countries of Western Europe, where it did not come to power, Stalinism was characterized by the following means: a method of controlling trade unions through physical violence up to and including political assassination, which was widely used against Trotskyists, left communists, and anarchists in the 20s and 30s during the Second World War, notably in Spain, France, Italy, Greece, and Vietnam. Slander, all kinds of financial, psychological, and material manipulation, allocation of full-timers posts, allocation of less arduous jobs in agreement with the company hierarchy, etc. Financial ties of dependence with the countries of the Soviet bloc when it existed, both through companies that traded with Stalinist regimes and through mass subscriptions, paid trips, and free holidays, etc. A conception of socialism as statism, opposed to workers' self-organization, strike committees, coordinations not under the umbrella of unions and parties, and of course workers' councils. Remember that the 1956 Hungarian uprising was denounced by the Western Communist parties, led by the French and Italian Communist parties, as a, quote, fascist plot, and, as we know today, Togliatti, General Secretary of the Italian Communist Party, gave his approval to the Russian intervention of October 23, 1956. Co-management of nationalized companies is a basis for extending the state sector and as a power base for the top echelons of the trade union and political bureaucracy. Support for the interests of the state technocracy, engineers and managers who play or are likely to play a decisive role in company management. Support for the interests of national capital against, quote, foreign states and, quote, foreign multinationals. Support for national small and medium enterprises against large national capitalist corporations. Support for the interest of national imperialism. Very discreet criticism of the dispatch of national troops abroad and of the plundering of third world resources by national imperialism. Lack of support for workers and democratic movements in the colonies and neo-colonies of national imperialism. Support for an indirect participation in repression, as in the case of the massacres in Sétif and Guelma on the 8th of May 1945 in Algeria, support for the Indochina War in 1947, silence on the massacres in Madagascar in 1947, support for the arms and nuclear industries, and more generally the cult of science and technical progress, management of municipalities in such a way as to infiltrate associations in order to control dissenting reactions and provide a political framework for the population. Municipal clientelism, allocation of apartments, jobs, etc. Cultural clientelism, the manipulation of complacent intellectuals and artists who, in exchange for support in the party press, invitations to parties, commissions from municipalities and the party, statues, paintings, books, etc., yesterday defended Stalinist regimes and today are trying to give the party a, quote, non-sectarian face. Support for foreign workers' associations controlled by third world regimes and infiltrated by the political police of these countries, e.g., Algeria. Support for populist third world regimes against their working class and poor peasants. See Venezuela today, but also Angola and Ceylon previously, for example. An anti-NATO and anti-American rhetoric, which yesterday served only to camouflage their support for the USSR's military ventures and the Soviet bureaucracy's plundering of Eastern Europe, and which today serves to extol the virtues of every national imperialism, the UN, and possibly even Russia. The neo-Stalinists are hardly different from the Stalinists on most of the above points, apart from their cautious distancing from certain, quote, abuses of what they dare to call, quote, real socialism. Their methods and aims are essentially the same, only their phraseology changes, and some of them no longer hesitate to immerse themselves in the ultra-globalization movement to better control it, or to form alliances with Trotskyist groups to radicalize their brand image. More generally, Stalinism is one of the expressions of capital's tendency to brutally integrate the working class and its organizations, such as fascism, Nazism, and Peronism, in contrast to seemingly, quote, softer methods such as the New Deal or the Popular Front, which at the same time attempted to grant a few, quote, advantages to workers without destroying the unions and parties claiming to defend the interests of proletarians. What distinguishes Stalinism from social democracy is, on the one hand, its origin, since it stems from the defeat of the first workers' revolution of the 20th century, and on the other, its formidable effectiveness by controlling part of the planet militarily and economically, launching a formidable process of primitive accumulation, and deporting hundreds of millions of peasants. Stalinism established a counter-revolutionary regime of terror based on a gigantic enterprise of ideological mystification. Not only did this regime murder millions of exploited people in its labor camps, prisons, and firing squads, but it also served as a repellent force for tens of millions of workers, particularly in Western countries where these parties had not established their dictatorship of the proletariat. It threw them into the arms of social democracy or right-wing or even far-right parties for a very long time, reinforcing the false idea that communism equals police dictatorship, and any revolution leads to a catastrophe for humanity. We're still paying the price for this confusion. That's the end of the piece. Thanks for listening.